The giant chamber filled with strange voices and clicking sounds as creatures from 27 different worlds gathered around the central platform. Ambassador Zextar stepped forward on his 6 legs, his purple skin gleaming under the bright lights. He had waited years for this moment when the Galactic Council would finally deal with the human problem. Fellow beings of the Council, Zextar began, his voice carrying across the vast room through translation devices. We are here today to discuss the species that calls itself humanity. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewer. His ship patrolled the edge of human space like it did every week. Jake had been doing this job for 15 years and had never seen anything more exciting than a few space pirates. Today felt different, though. His communication officer turned around with worry on her face. "Captain, we're getting a priority message from the Galactic Council," she said. It's marked as official business. Jake felt his stomach drop. The Council rarely contacted humanity directly, and when they did, it was never good news. "Put it on screen." The image that appeared showed Ambassador Zextar standing in front of the Council chamber.
His alien features look stern and unforgiving.
"To the government and people of Earth," he said, "the Galactic Council has reached a decision about your species. On Earth, President Lisa Carter was having lunch with her advisors when the emergency alert came through. She rushed to the Situation Room where Admiral Pete Collins and Dr. Rachel Stone were already waiting. The room's large screen showed the same message that Captain Morrison was receiving thousands of light years away. "Your species has existed in our galaxy for only 50 years, Zextar continued. "But in that time you have caused nothing but trouble. You expand too quickly. You ignore our established rules. You develop dangerous technologies without proper oversight." Dr. Stone leaned forward in her chair. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. As head of strategic research, she knew more about human capabilities than anyone else in the room. She also knew things that even the president didn't know about. "The Council has decided that humanity must be brought under proper control," Zextar said. "You have 30 standard days to comply with our demands. First, you must share all your technology with the Council. Second, you must limit your population growth according to our guidelines. Third, you must surrender all military vessels to Council oversight." Admiral Collins made a sound of disgust. He was an old soldier who had fought in the border wars 20 years ago. His weathered face showed exactly what he thought of the Council's demands. "They want us to give up everything that makes us human," he said. President Carter raised her hand for silence. She was still listening to the message. Zextar's next words made everyone in the room freeze. "If humanity does not comply within 30 days, the Council will take corrective action. We have assembled a fleet of 10,000 ships from all member species. We do not wish to use force, but we will if necessary." The message ended with coordinates for where humanity should send their response. The room fell quiet except for the soft humming of computers. Everyone understood what they had just heard. It was not a request or a negotiation. It was an ultimatum. 10,000 ships, Admiral Collins said quietly. "We have maybe 300 vessels that could fight, and most of those are patrol boats and cargo haulers." Dr. Stone stood up and walked to the window. Outside, people were going about their normal lives, not knowing that their entire civilization had just been threatened. "They're scared of us," she said finally. "Scared?" President Carter asked. "They just told us they have 10,000 ships. What could they possibly fear from us?" "Think about it," Dr. Stone replied. "We've been in space for 50 years. Most Council species took hundreds or thousands of years to reach our level of technology. Our quantum drives are faster than anything they have. Our artificial intelligence systems are more advanced. Our medical technology can cure diseases they consider hopeless." She turned back to face the room. "We've been careful not to show them everything we can do. Maybe too careful. Captain Morrison's ship received new orders within an hour. All human vessels were to return to their home bases immediately. Military leaves were canceled. Civilian traffic was suspended. The entire human military was quietly moving into position. On the mining station at Alpha Centauri, workers received evacuation orders that made no sense. The station produced materials that were essential to human industry. Why would they abandon it now? But the orders came from Earth Command, and they were marked as highest priority. Similar messages went out to every human settlement, every research station, every military base beyond Earth's solar system. Most people didn't understand why they were being asked to pack up and leave places they had called home for decades. Dr. Stone returned to her laboratory beneath the Strategic Research Building. Her assistants looked up as she entered, noting the serious expression on her face. "Begin Protocol 7, she told them. The assistants exchanged glances. Protocol 7 was theoretical, something they had developed over years of secret research. It was never meant to be used except in the most desperate circumstances. "Are you sure, Doctor?" asked Dr. Martin Lee, her deputy. "Once we start Protocol 7, there's no going back. I'm sure," Dr. Stone replied. She walked to a secure terminal and began entering authorization codes that only 3 people in the entire government knew. "The Council wants to see what humanity is capable of. It's time we showed them." President Carter met with the full cabinet that evening. The discussion went on for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. Humanity would not surrender its freedom to alien overlords no matter how many ships they had. "The evacuation will begin tomorrow," she announced. "Every human settlement outside the Sol system will be abandoned within 30 days. We're going to disappear." "Disappear?" asked the Secretary of Defense. "Where will we go?" President Carter looked at Dr. Stone, who nodded. "Somewhere the Council will never find us," the President said. "And when we're gone, they'll realize that starting this war was the biggest mistake they ever made." Captain Morrison received his final orders as the deadline approached. His ship and crew would be among the last to leave human space. As he looked at the stars one more time from his patrol route, he wondered if he would ever see them again. The Council thought they were forcing humanity to submit or die. They had no idea they were about to discover what humans could really do when they stopped holding back. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching something that should have been impossible. Massive ships appeared out of nowhere near the human colony on Kepler 438b. These vessels were larger than anything he had ever seen, easily 10 times the size of the biggest Council dreadnoughts. Their hulls seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to look at directly. "Captain," his sensor operator called out, "I'm getting readings on those ships, but they don't make sense. The energy signatures are off the charts and they're using some kind of technology that's scrambling our instruments." Jake nodded. He had received orders about this operation, but seeing it happen was still incredible. "How long until the colony is evacuated?" "At this rate, maybe 6 hours, sir. Those transport ships can carry hundreds of thousands of people each." On the surface of Kepler 438b, colonist Mary Johnson packed her few belongings while watching the giant ships land in the distance. She had lived on this world for 20 years, helped build the cities and farms that made it home to 3 million humans. Now government officials were telling everyone they had to leave immediately. "Where are we going?" she asked the evacuation coordinator, a serious young man with military bearing. "Somewhere safe," he replied. "That's all I can tell you right now. Please board Transport 7 when your section is called." The transport ships worked with incredible efficiency. People walked up ramps and disappeared inside vessels that seemed bigger on the inside than the outside. Mary tried to look through the windows as her transport lifted off, but all she could see was stars that looked different somehow, as if they were moving in ways that made no sense. On the Council homeworld, Fleet Commander Vexhai received reports that made him angry and confused at the same time. His intelligence network had been watching human settlements for weeks, preparing for the invasion that would begin when the 30-day deadline passed. Now his spies were sending impossible information. "The humans are evacuating," his aide reported, "but we can't track where they're going. Our long-range sensors detect the transport ships, but then they simply vanish. It's like they're jumping to hyperspace, but using technology we've never seen before." Vexhai studied the tactical display showing human space. Red dots marked the locations where human settlements should be. One by one, those dots were going dark as colonies reported zero population.
"How many people are we talking about?"
"Approximately 40 billion humans across all their worlds, sir. They're moving entire populations in a matter of days." Lieutenant Commander Amy Parker oversaw the evacuation of the Kepler 442 research facility, humanity's most advanced scientific outpost. The facility housed experiments that pushed the boundaries of physics and engineering. Now she was watching it all being packed up or shut down by automated systems. "The quantum research labs are sealed," reported her assistant, Dr. Carl Wong. "All the experimental equipment is either being loaded onto the transport ships or being rendered permanently inoperative." Amy walked through the empty corridors one last time. Just yesterday, these halls had been filled with scientists working on projects that could revolutionize galactic civilization. Now they echoed with her footsteps and nothing else. "The council thinks we're running away," she said to Dr. Wong as they boarded the final transport. "They have no idea we're just getting started." The transport ship lifted off from Kepler 442, and Amy watched the research facility shrink below them. As they reached orbit, she saw automated systems beginning the final phase of the evacuation protocol. Buildings that had taken decades to construct were being aged artificially, made to look like they had been abandoned for years. Council surveillance ships arrived at human settlements only to find ghost towns. On New Geneva, Commander Kex led a team of council investigators through empty streets and abandoned buildings. Everything looked normal except for the complete absence of people. "The power is still working," one of his officers reported. "Food is still fresh in some of the restaurants. But carbon dating suggests these buildings have been empty for 30 years. Kex examined a human coffee shop that still had cups sitting on tables. The coffee was still warm, but dust covered everything as if no one had been there for decades. "This is impossible. Matter doesn't age like this naturally." Similar reports came in from every human world the council investigated. Populations that had numbered in the millions had simply vanished, leaving behind settlements that looked like they had been abandoned for generations. Dr. Rachel Stone stood in her empty laboratory on Earth, inputting final commands into a quantum computer that most humans didn't know existed. Around her, automated systems were implementing technology that the council had never imagined possible. Time dilation fields made minutes pass like years in abandoned buildings. Quantum aging devices turned new constructions into ancient ruins in hours. "All non-essential facilities have been temporarily adjusted," she reported to President Carter over a secure channel. "When the council arrives, they'll find exactly what we want them to find." President Carter was aboard the command ship New Horizons, watching Earth shrink in the distance through a viewing port. It felt strange to leave the world where humanity had evolved, but she knew they would return someday. When they did, it would be as masters of their own destiny. "How many people do we still need to evacuate?" she asked Admiral Collins. "Maybe 5 million, he replied. "All military personnel and essential government staff. The civilian population is already safely relocated." "Relocated where?" Admiral Collins smiled. "To places the council doesn't know exist. Places they can't even imagine." Captain Morrison's ship was among the last human vessels in council space. His orders were to make sure the evacuation was complete and to observe the council's reaction. Through his ship's advanced sensors, he watched council fleets moving toward human territory. "They're bringing everything they have," his tactical officer reported. "At least 8,000 ships from what we can detect. They really think they're going to fight a war." Jake felt almost sorry for them. The council had no idea what humans were actually capable of. They had seen human ships that were fast and human technology that was advanced. But they had never seen what humans could build when they stopped pretending to be a normal spacefaring species. "Set course for the rendezvous point," he ordered. "It's time to disappear." The UES Defiance jumped to hyperspace, but not the kind of hyperspace the council understood. They entered a dimension that human scientists had discovered and learned to navigate in secret. It was faster than anything the council had, and completely undetectable by their sensors. As Jake's ship approached the rendezvous coordinates, he saw something that took his breath away. Hundreds of human ships were gathered there, but these weren't the vessels the council knew about. These were ships built with technology that humanity had kept hidden for decades. They were works of art and engineering that made council dreadnoughts look like primitive toys. The largest ship in the fleet was 10 kilometers long and generated its own gravity field. Smaller vessels moved around it like schools of fish, their hulls gleaming with energy shields that bent space itself. "Welcome to the real human fleet," came a transmission from the flagship. "Time to show the council what they've gotten themselves into." Jake realized that the 30-day evacuation had not been humanity running away in fear. It had been humanity moving into position for something the council was completely unprepared for. The war they thought they were starting was about to become a demonstration of power beyond their wildest nightmares. Fleet Commander Vexhai led the largest military force in galactic history, through the edge of human space. 10,000 ships from 27 different worlds moved in perfect formation, their weapons powered and shields raised. Behind him followed troop transports carrying occupation forces, scientific vessels ready to study human technology, and administrative ships prepared to establish council rule over former human worlds. All ships report ready for combat operations, his communications officer announced. Forward scouts report no sign of human military activity. Vexhi studied the tactical display showing their approach to the first human world, a colony called New Geneva. According to Council intelligence, 3 million humans lived there in cities that sprawled across 2 continents. They should have been able to see the lights of those cities from space by now. "Sir," the sensor operator called out with confusion in her voice. "I'm detecting no energy signatures from the planet. No power grids, no communication signals, no ship traffic. It's like the world is completely dead." The fleet commander felt his confidence waver slightly. Intelligence reports had shown this world bustling with activity just weeks ago. "Take us into orbit. Deploy reconnaissance teams." The first shuttles landed in what had been New Geneva's capital city. Commander Kex led the advance team through streets that looked like they belonged in a museum. Buildings stood intact but covered with years of weathering. Vehicles sat abandoned on roadways, their metal bodies rusted as if they had been sitting there for decades. "This doesn't match our surveillance data," Kex reported back to the fleet. "These structures show clear signs of long-term abandonment. Carbon dating suggests they've been empty for 30 to 40 years. Vexhi felt anger rising in his chest. Human trickery was the only explanation that made sense. "They're trying to fool us somehow. Keep searching. Find evidence of recent habitation." But the search teams found nothing except more mysteries. Restaurants with food that had rotted away years ago. Libraries with books that had yellowed with age. Hospitals with equipment that looked ancient and unused. Every building told the same story of a civilization that had simply vanished long before the council arrived. Similar reports came from every human world the fleet investigated. Kepler 438b showed no signs of its former 3 million residents. The mining stations at Wolf 359 looked like they had been abandoned for generations. Research facilities that council spies had reported as highly active now appeared to be crumbling ruins. Ambassador Zextar received the reports in his quarters aboard the command ship. His multiple eyes studied the data streams with growing confusion and concern. "How is this possible?" he asked his aide. "Our surveillance clearly showed active human populations on all these worlds. Perhaps humans have technology we don't understand," the aide suggested carefully. "Their ships were always faster than ours. Their computers were more advanced. Maybe they found ways to hide their true activities. But even that explanation didn't account for what the landing teams were discovering. On the world that humans had called Paradise, investigators found a government building with active computer terminals. Most of the systems were dead, but one screen still displayed information that made Zextar's blood run cold. The message was simple and appeared in multiple council languages. "The demonstration will begin shortly. Please maintain safe distance from the following star systems." Below that was a list of coordinates for uninhabited stellar regions throughout the galaxy. "What demonstration?" Zextar demanded of his intelligence staff. "What are they planning?" Nobody had answers. The human worlds were empty, but they hadn't been destroyed or damaged. The evacuation had been so complete and so perfectly executed that it seemed impossible. 40 billion people didn't just disappear without leaving any trace of where they went. Counselor Threx arrived at the scene of humanity's former capital world aboard his personal cruiser. As leader of the Syndicate faction, he had been one of the strongest supporters of military action against the humans. Now he walked through the empty corridors of what had been Earth's orbital trading station. "They ran," he declared to the news services that were covering the Council's victory. Faced with the righteous power of the galaxy's civilized species, the humans chose cowardice over conflict. They abandoned everything they had built rather than submit to proper authority. But privately, Threx was not as confident as his public statement suggested. The precision of the evacuation troubled him. Every piece of advanced technology had been either removed or rendered completely inoperative. Critical computer systems had been wiped so thoroughly that even Council cyber specialists couldn't recover any useful data. Back on the Council homeworld, celebrations filled the streets as news of humanity's disappearance spread. Citizens of 27 different species gathered to praise their leader's wisdom in dealing with the human threat. The dangerous, unpredictable species that had worried the galaxy for 50 years was gone. We have achieved total victory without firing a single shot, declared Speaker Nextall to the assembled council chamber. The humans have been removed as a threat to galactic stability. We can now focus on more important matters. Fleet Commander Vexhai was not celebrating. He stood in the command center of his flagship, studying reports from search teams across human space. Something about this situation felt fundamentally wrong, but he couldn't identify exactly what. "Sir," his science officer reported, "we've completed detailed scans of all former human territories. Population count is 0. Military assets appear to have been either removed or destroyed. Industrial capacity has been completely shut down." "What about their shipyards?" Vexhai asked. "The facilities where they built their vessels?" "Empty, sir. But the equipment shows signs of having been operational until very recently. Whatever they used to evacuate their people, they built it in secret and removed all traces when they left." The fleet commander walked to the main viewer and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 40 billion humans had simply vanished. Ships that could carry entire populations had appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as mysteriously. Technology that could make decades pass in hours had aged entire cities to hide the evidence of recent habitation. "They didn't run because they were afraid of us," he realized aloud. "They left because they were preparing for something else." His aide looked up from her station. "Sir?" "Think about it," Vexhai said, his voice quiet with growing dread. "A species that can evacuate 40 billion people in 30 days without leaving any trace of where they went. Ships that can appear and disappear at will using technology we can't detect or understand. The ability to manipulate time itself to age buildings and equipment." The implications were becoming clear, and they terrified him. "We weren't threatening them," he continued. "We were forcing them to reveal capabilities they had been hiding. And if they can do all this, what else are they capable of?" On the bridge, alarms suddenly began sounding. The communications officer looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on all council frequencies. It's coming from outside the galaxy." "Outside the galaxy?" Vexhai repeated. "That's impossible. Nothing can transmit across intergalactic distances. The signal is incredibly strong, sir, and it's definitely human in origin." The main viewer activated to show a human woman in what appeared to be a command center of impossible sophistication. Behind her, displays showed star charts that covered entire galactic clusters. Technology hummed with power that made Council science look primitive by comparison. "People of the Galactic Council," President Lisa Carter said, her voice calm and measured, "you demanded a demonstration of human capabilities. What you have witnessed so far is our evacuation technology, our temporal manipulation systems, and our transportation methods. These represent basic tools that we developed decades ago." Vexhai felt his legs give out beneath him. If this was basic technology, what were humans really capable of? "Tomorrow," President Carter continued, "we will demonstrate stellar engineering. Next week, controlled black hole generation. The week after that, dimensional manipulation on a galactic scale." The transmission paused, and when it resumed, the president's expression had hardened. "You wanted to see what humanity could do when threatened? Now you know, we didn't disappear because we were afraid of your 10,000 ships. We left because we were afraid of what we might do to them." The transmission ended, leaving the Council fleet alone in empty human space. Around them, abandoned worlds continued their silent orbits, monuments to a species that had just revealed it was playing by completely different rules than anyone else in the galaxy. Dr. Rachel Stone stood on the observation deck of the Horizon's Edge, humanity's most advanced vessel, watching the first demonstration through sensors that could see across dimensions. The ship itself was a marvel that defied every known law of physics, powered by controlled singularities and equipped with technology that treated space and time as raw materials to be shaped. "Beginning stellar modification sequence," announced Commander Steve Blake from the ship's bridge. Around him, human technicians operated controls that would have seemed like magic to the Council species. They were about to show the galaxy what humans could really do when they stopped pretending to be ordinary. The target was a red dwarf star in the Corex system, 3 light-years from the nearest inhabited world. It was old and dim, the kind of star that would burn for trillions of years but never provide enough energy to support advanced civilization on nearby planets. That was about to change in ways the Council couldn't imagine. "Initiating quantum field manipulation," reported the chief engineer, a calm woman named Dr. Lisa Park. "Stellar core temperature increasing. nuclear fusion rates climbing within acceptable parameters. Through the ship's sensors, Dr. Stone watched as invisible forces reached into the heart of the distant star. Human technology that had been developed in secret for decades was rewriting the fundamental processes that powered suns. The star's energy output began climbing steadily, its light growing brighter with each passing minute. On the Council homeworld, astronomical monitoring stations detected the changes immediately. Scientists who had spent their entire careers studying stellar physics stared at readings that made no sense. Stars didn't behave this way. They couldn't be controlled like machines with dials and switches. The energy output has increased by 400%, reported Chief Astronomer Dexval to the Emergency Council session. But the star isn't going supernova or collapsing into a black hole. It's becoming more stable, not less. The fusion processes are being controlled with incredible precision. Ambassador Zextar felt fear creeping into his mind as he listened to the reports. Are you saying the humans can modify stars at will? That appears to be exactly what they're doing, Dexval replied. And if they can increase a star's energy output this dramatically while keeping it stable, they could theoretically do the opposite. They could extinguish suns if they wanted to. Fleet Commander Vexhai received similar reports aboard his flagship, still patrolling empty human space. His science officers were recording energy readings from the Corex system that broke every theoretical model they had for stellar behavior. Sir, whatever the humans are doing, it requires technology so far beyond our understanding that we might as well be insects trying to comprehend starship engines, his chief scientist admitted. We can detect the effects, but we have no idea how they're accomplishing it. The demonstration continued for 6 hours. When it was complete, the red dwarf had been transformed into a brilliant yellow star that would burn cleanly for millions of years, while providing enough energy to support thriving worlds throughout its system. It was stellar engineering on a scale that the Council had never even theorized about. But the humans weren't finished. 12 hours later, another star in a different system underwent the same transformation, then another. Each time the process was perfect, controlled, and demonstrated mastery over forces that held galaxies together. On the research station New Thinking, Dr. Carl Wong monitored the Council's communications traffic with equipment that could intercept messages across the entire galaxy. The panic spreading through Council space was obvious in every transmission he decoded. They're mobilizing everything, he reported to Admiral Pete Collins over a quantum-encrypted channel. Every species is committing their entire military to finding us. They're more terrified than angry now. Admiral Collins nodded from his position aboard the command ship. Around him, the real human fleet waited in the void between galaxies, hidden by technology that rendered them completely invisible to Council sensors. Ships that could reshape matter at the atomic level, vessels powered by artificial black holes, weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. Good, he said. Fear might make them smart enough to listen to reason. President Carter stood in the Situation Room of New Horizon Station, humanity's mobile command center that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Through quantum viewing systems, she could observe events anywhere in the galaxy in real time. Right now, she was watching Council leaders argue frantically in their emergency sessions. They still don't understand, she observed to Dr. Stone, who had returned from overseeing the stellar demonstrations. They think this is about showing off our weapons. They don't realize we're trying to avoid using them. Dr. Stone activated a holographic display that showed the modified stars burning with controlled fusion fires. The stellar engineering is impressive, but it's actually one of our gentler technologies. We could have demonstrated matter conversion, dimensional folding, or temporal manipulation on a galactic scale. Let's save those for next week, President Carter said grimly. I think it's time for a more direct conversation with the Council. The transmission was broadcast simultaneously to every world in Council space, appearing on screens in government buildings, military command centers, and public gathering places. President Carter appeared as a three-dimensional hologram with perfect clarity, speaking from what was obviously a command center of impossible sophistication. People of the Galactic Council, she began, you asked for a demonstration of human capabilities. Over the past 3 days, you have observed basic stellar engineering. We have modified 6 stars in uninhabited systems to show you what controlled stellar manipulation looks like. Behind her, displays showed technical readouts from the stellar modifications, data streams that revealed the precision and power involved in the process. Council scientists studying the transmission realized they were looking at technology centuries ahead of their own. This represents technology we developed 30 years ago, President Carter continued. It is not our most advanced capability. It is not even close to our most advanced capability. The image expanded to show star charts covering entire galactic clusters, regions of space that the Council didn't even know existed. Hundreds of systems were marked with symbols indicating human exploration and development. Tomorrow we will demonstrate planetary engineering. We will show you how to transform dead worlds into garden planets in a matter of hours. Next week, we will demonstrate controlled black hole generation and how to use artificial singularities as tools rather than weapons. She paused, letting the implications sink in across thousands of worlds where billions of beings were watching. The week after that, we will show you dimensional manipulation, how to fold space so that distant galaxies become next-door neighbors, how to create pocket universes for industrial production, how to step outside of time itself when necessary. Council leaders who had been celebrating their victory over humanity now sat in stunned silence as they realized the true scope of what they had challenged. You demanded that humanity submit to your authority, President Carter said, her voice becoming harder. You threatened us with 10,000 ships and called it overwhelming force. You believed you were dealing with a primitive species that had gotten lucky with a few technological advances. The hologram expanded again to show images of the human fleet hidden between galaxies, ships that stretched for kilometers, powered by controlled black holes, armed with weapons that could rewrite physics itself, vessels that existed partially in other dimensions, fleets that could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantaneously. This is what you were actually threatening, President Carter continued. A species that learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe decades ago. A civilization that can treat stars like light bulbs, planets like gardens, and entire galaxies like neighborhoods. She leaned forward, and her image appeared on screens across the galaxy with crystal clarity. We didn't leave because we were afraid of your fleet. We left because we were afraid of what we might do to it, because the species you thought you knew was just the version of humanity that was being polite. The transmission ended, but its effects rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. On thousands of worlds, beings who had supported the war against humanity now understood that they had just declared war on gods. Fleet Commander Vex High sat in his command chair, staring at tactical displays that showed his 10,000 ships scattered across empty human space. For the first time in his military career, he understood what it meant to be completely, utterly outmatched by an enemy that wasn't even trying to fight back yet. Admiral Pete Collins stood in the war room of New Horizons Station, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the position of every council ship in the galaxy. The station itself existed in a pocket of folded space between dimensions, making it impossible for council sensors to detect even if they knew what to look for. They've committed everything they have to finding us, reported Captain Kate Hughes, the station's intelligence chief. Her displays showed the movement of fleets from every council member species. 27 different military forces are cooperating for the first time in galactic history. Collins studied the tactical information with the eye of someone who had fought wars across multiple star systems. Even combined, the council forces represented less threat than a single human dreadnought, but their desperation was making them dangerous in unpredictable ways. Any sign they're considering our offer to negotiate? He asked. Captain Hughes shook her head. Ambassador Zextar is pushing for continued military action. He's convinced that humanity is bluffing about our capabilities. On the Council homeworld, emergency sessions had been running continuously for a week. The chamber that usually echoed with diplomatic discussions now buzzed, with panicked arguments as representatives from 27 species tried to understand what they were facing. They're making our suns more efficient, shouted the representative from the hegemony worlds. If they can improve stellar output, they can certainly reduce it. They could freeze our entire star system if they chose to. Where did they go? Demanded the Zentorian delegate, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights. How does a species hide 40 billion individuals without leaving any trace? What kind of technology can move entire populations across interstellar distances in days? Speaker Nextall struggled to maintain order as voices rose throughout the chamber. The discovery that humanity possessed technology, centuries ahead of Council. Science had shattered the comfortable assumption that they were the galaxy's dominant civilization. Ambassador, Zexter stood to address the chaos. His purple skin had taken on a darker shade that indicated stress among his species. Fellow counselors, we must not let fear cloud our judgment. The humans have demonstrated impressive technology, yes, but they are still only one species. We represent the combined wisdom and strength of 27 worlds. Combined wisdom that led us to threaten gods with pointed sticks, muttered Counselor Threx from the Syndicate delegation. Before Zextar could respond, the chamber's main display activated without authorization from Council technicians. The image that appeared showed Dr. Rachel Stone standing in what appeared to be a laboratory, filled with equipment that defied identification. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she said, her voice carrying clearly through translation systems. I am Dr. Stone, Director of Human Strategic Research. I appear before you today to answer a question that seems to be troubling your deliberations. The chamber fell silent. No one had authorized this transmission, and Council security systems should have prevented any outside access to their communication networks. You want to know where humanity went? Dr. Stone continued. The answer is simple. We left your galaxy entirely. The statement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Several representatives jumped to their feet in disbelief. Dr. Stone gestured, and the display expanded to show star charts of incredible scope. Entire galactic clusters appeared, mapped in detail that suggested extensive exploration and development. This galaxy contains approximately 400 billion stars, she explained. We have surveyed most of them over the past 50 years. We have also surveyed the neighboring galaxies within a 50 million light-year radius. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. If humans could travel between galaxies routinely, their technology was beyond anything the Council could comprehend. We established our first permanent settlements outside this galaxy 20 years ago, Dr. Stone continued. We have been quietly relocating our population to better neighborhoods. Places with more hospitable species, more interesting physics, fewer restrictions on technological development. Fleet Commander Vexhai watched the transmission from his flagship's bridge. Around him, his officers stared at displays showing galactic maps that covered regions of space they didn't know existed. Sir, his navigator whispered, if they can travel between galaxies, how are we supposed to find them with conventional hyperspace drives? Vexhai had no answer. His fleet of 10,000 ships suddenly seemed as relevant as wooden sailing vessels chasing spacecraft. President Carter's voice joined the transmission, her image appearing alongside Dr. Stone's. The evacuation you witnessed was not humanity fleeing in panic. It was the completion of a relocation project that has been underway for decades. She gestured toward displays showing massive construction projects in distant galaxies. Human cities built around stars that had been modified for optimal energy output. Worlds transformed into perfect garden environments. We didn't leave because we were afraid of your fleets, President Carter said. We left because we found places where we could build the kind of civilization we actually wanted, without having to pretend we were limited by conventional physics. The transmission shifted to show human ships that dwarfed entire Council fleets, vessels that seemed to bend space around themselves, technology that treated the fundamental forces of nature as raw materials for construction projects. But you asked for a demonstration of our capabilities, Dr. Stone resumed, and demonstrations require an audience. So we maintained a small presence in this galaxy specifically to show you what you were challenging. Admiral Collins appeared in the transmission, his weathered face serious as he addressed the Council directly. Every human ship you've seen, every piece of technology you've studied, every capability you've witnessed represents equipment we built specifically to interact with Council-level civilizations, he said. It's the technological equivalent of adults speaking slowly and using small words when talking to children. The insult was clear, but so was the truth behind it. Human technology operated on levels that made Council science look primitive. We're offering you one final chance to reconsider your position, President Carter continued. Stop hunting for us. Stop trying to enforce your authority over species that haven't consented to it. Accept that this galaxy is large enough for multiple approaches to civilization. The transmission paused, and when it resumed, President Carter's expression had hardened. Because the alternative is that we stop being considerate neighbors and start treating you the way you've been treating others, Dr. Stone activated new displays showing human fleets that had been hidden throughout the galaxy, weapons platforms that could destabilize star systems, technology that could rewrite the laws of physics across entire sectors of space. "If you force us to take direct action," Dr. Stone said, "you will discover that the species you've been threatening doesn't actually exist anymore. The humans you thought you knew were a role we played to avoid frightening you." The transmission expanded to show the scope of human presence across multiple galaxies, civilizations that spanned clusters of star systems, technology that treated entire universes as construction sites. "The real humanity has been building something magnificent in the space between galaxies," President Carter concluded. "We would prefer to continue that work in peace, but if you insist on continuing this conflict, you will meet the species we actually are rather than the one we pretended to be." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Outside, the modified stars continued to burn with impossible efficiency, constant reminders that somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, humanity was waiting with power beyond imagining. For the first time in galactic history, the council found itself hoping that their enemies would choose to remain hidden rather than reveal the full scope of what they were capable of. Ambassador Zextar sat down slowly, his confidence finally broken. Around him, representatives from 27 worlds struggled to accept that they had just declared war on a species that could rearrange galaxies like furniture. They thought they were starting had become a prayer that it would never actually begin.